It's time for the finals. We are late into the evening here for YETICON 2.0, November 18th, 2023 in Lakewood, Colorado. This is Atlantic Rules Old School Magic the Gathering. David Merriam and Joe Yeti Nash are going to be facing off. We saw David Merriam's semifinal match, and we actually saw Joe Yeti play earlier in the rounds here at the feature table on this channel. David Merriam is on a very, very potent build of the deck. We saw that in the last video here. David tries to establish control with his blue and white removal pieces, counter pieces, and card advantage with artifacts and, of course, the blue power. Over on Joe Yeti's side, if you haven't seen his other match, do go ahead and check that out. He's on a sweet, sweet, sweet blue and white robots build that uses Mishra's Workshop to power out big artifacts. Notable is the Obscenous Golem, the 4/6 big body golem that can come across and can be powered out very quickly with some of Joe's fast artifact mana. So let's see how these players do in the championship round. Game 1 here at the championship round of YETICON 2.0. In the room here at this time, there's a good mix of players. Some of them are watching this game, as many as we can fit around this table. Other players are playing sorcery. Other players are cubing. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on. Joe Yeti Nash shows off his hand. We got some copy artifacts and tundras. David on his side has some early mana acceleration, and I believe that was a book. So both players, you'd like to say, have some of their threats ready to go. I'm not sure if we saw in Joe's hand one of his big artifacts. I think I saw 2 copy artifacts. I don't know if I saw or which one I did see on the glance of the hand. I appreciate them showing off the hand, though, to the camera. Joe Yeti Nash is also known for keeping scores and notes on matches in this very cool notebook. So I believe he may even be recording other match data as well. I love that idea, and it's so cool that you have that memento of all the matches that you play officially. So it's way to go, Joe Yeti. Let's see how we get started. Joe on his turn plays a Tundra and a Mox Pearl. David takes a look, and he has a Tundra of his own, and there's a Mox Emerald. So quick acceleration from both players. Yeti, of course, is trying to rush out a big artifact if he can. Plays a City of Brass, going to take a damage down to 19 from that city, and he's going to start the life total in the book. And he starts to search the library. Now, we did get a glance at a Demonic Tutor in hand, and what's happening here is David points and says, I believe you, Joe. I believe that you're tutoring, but let's go ahead and take a look at that card anyway. Yeti was going through the library. He knew his line. He knew his play. And David says, let's just make it official. So now there is Yeti taking a look through his library. May go for the Ancestral. May go for a Workshop to try to power something out. May go for one of those big artifact threats. So let's see what is in store for Yeti. If it's the Ancestral, with Joe's hand size, Yeti's hand size might be cast in David's upkeep before he can draw another blue source. Let's see where the players go with this. David cuts. Yeti taking another look at his hand with the fresh card from the tutor. Pass the turn, and I believe that's what we just saw. So pass the turn, and in David's upkeep, we will cast the Ancestral. Now David draws a card. The reason there is if you would have more than 7 cards in your hand with your available mana, you don't want to discard the cards you just drew, so you do it in the other player's upkeep before David could draw another card that could possibly be a blue source for a counter. All right, so Yeti tapping 4, going to take another damage from the City of Brass down to 18. Off of the Ancestral, here's a Mind Twist for 3, and David has a quick counterspell for the Mind Twist. So that one would likely have been for the Ancestral if he had waited until after David's draw that last turn. Anyway, David says, let's play a Factory, and here's a Jam Day Tome. Yeti on his side takes his draw. David is tapped out, so let's see what play Yeti has. A Workshop into a big artifact would be a cool play. Instead, we have a Tundra. Yeti's going to tap 2 mana and play a Copy Artifact. Copy Artifact comes in as a copy of the Jam Day Tome. So the Copy Artifact, current ruling, of course, is that it enters as a perfect artifact copy. It is not blue. The only difference is that it is also an enchantment. So right now that is an artifact enchantment called Jam Day Tome for 4 mana. with the same effect as Jam-Day Tome. Now, Yeti just has 3 mana untapped, so he can't draw a card off of it just yet. If he had one more, he could sneak a card off of it quick, even almost before David did. David, on his side, says Divine Offering. So yes, this is a legal target for Divine Offering. That's why that's relevant, because Divine Offering is destroy target artifact. You gain life equal to its casting cost. So it is not a blue enchantment. It is a 4 mana artifact enchantment. David can target it with the Divine Offering, and it gains 4 life to 24 from it. So David looks like lights up the factory and attacks over. So Yeti is going from 18 down to 16. And on we go. So Divine Offering is a very nice answer to, it's a 2 mana answer to the 2 mana Copy Artifact. It's nice. A Copy Artifact is great because it gets you some good value. 2 mana for whatever artifact you can. So that was a nice cheap book that Yeti had, and David just happened to have the perfect answer in Divine Offering for it. Yeti taking a look at his options. He taps the Pearl, the Sea, 1 Tundra. David's they're looking at the untapped mana. David just has 1 mana untapped right now after attacking and Divine Offering. Yeti pump fakes the tap, plays down an Underground Sea. And now we'll tap it out. Here's a Triskelion, and Yeti goes to 15. And David, with just the 1 mana floating, or one mana available, not able to counter it, enters battlefield with those 3 +1/+1 counters. So Yeti has a 4/4 artifact creature on the board, ready to remove those counters and ping anything for up to 3 damage. Here comes a Balance on David's side. Balance is going to, if it resolves, get rid of that Triskelion. In response, looks like they're counting up lands because you have to discard your creatures, your lands have to be equal, and then cards in hand. So he's going to ping David for 3. That factory is not active yet, so it's not actually a legal target to do the damage to. And now he's going to lose some cards. There's another Copy Artifact down in Yeti's graveyard. And David looks like declines the attack, probably saving mana for the book. He'd rather have a card than 2 damage at this point. Okay, on Yeti's side, he's going to cast a Time Twister. And David said, sure, let's do the twist. Let's do the twist. And remember, David does have 4 mana and an untapped book up. So David's going to draw 7, and then likely when Joe taps, or if, I don't know, even if Joe tries to take an action, David can, in response, draw another card. So Yeti just looking to refill after his hand was drained by that Balance. Both players given a good shuffle. Time Twister, you shuffle your graveyard and your hand into your library, and both players draw back up to 7. So it's a nice comeback from Mind Twist. It's a nice equalizer, although David has the card advantage engine on the board right now. Library of Alexandria is a nice play to follow up a Time Twister, whether your own or your opponent's. And let's see what Yeti has here in his post Time Twister part of his turn. Time Walk is always nice if you can grab that. That way you can use some of your mana. He's tapping 2. Does he have it? He has a Copy Artifact, and it's going to enter the battlefield. And it's going to enter the battlefield as a book. So Copy Artifact, you don't choose what it's going to copy until it enters the battlefield. So David's response window is when the Copy Artifact is on the stack. When the spell resolves and enters the battlefield, that's when it becomes what it becomes. So you have a moment there that you can react, but you can't know what your opponent wants to do. Yeti's side, there is a Sage of Latnam. Sage of Latnam is a 1/2 creature, I believe, but you can tap it to sack an artifact and draw a card. So it's nice if you're playing lots of artifacts. You can sacrifice artifacts that you're not using, or you can sack an artifact in response to it being destroyed to get some card advantage from it. You could cycle your Moxes all day if you wanted. So it looks like Yeti is going to pass the turn. David will draw a card. So that was a very long and productive turn from Yeti. He built up a much better board state. But let's see what David's answers are. David was not declined to counter or interact with anything Yeti did on that turn. Yeti is tapped out, so David's going to play down a Strip Mine. Taps his Emerald for a Soul Ring. And out comes, I believe that's a Lotus, Black Lotus. David has it back with his mana. He's tapping a couple more. There's another Divine Offering on that book. So that is 2 Jam-Day Tomes and 8 life that David has gained from Divine Offerings on that one. So that is a great card for David to have. And David does have those main deck. A lot of players rock those in the sideboard for artifact-heavy decks. David does have some main deck here in Game 1. So now David's going to attack with the 2/2 Factory. And Yeti goes down to 12. And David says, go ahead. So the Sage of Latnam was still summoning 6, so it could not sack the artifact in response to the Divine Offering, so David did that at the perfect time. Yeti not able to get the card advantage or even just a card back that he wanted to from that. He took the 1-for-1 from David, so Yeti tapping 2 more. There's a Disenchant targeting the Jam-Day Tome. He says, fine, if I can't have one, then you can't have one either, David. Respectfully. David is tapping 4. So if he doesn't counter this, he's probably just going to draw from it. And David does say, let's just go ahead and destroy it. So David gets 1 more card from the book. It served him well. It gave a valiant effort. Got him a number of cards. Yeti's going to tap his Mishra's Workshop he played before. And here comes a Suchi. So Mishra's Workshop gives him 4 mana. Suchi is a 4/4 artifact creature. When it goes to the graveyard, it adds 4 mana to your mana pool. We saw this in Joe's deck earlier in the rounds. He's attacking with his factory, is Joe. And what happened there, David says, I will strip mine that factory. And in response then, Joe went ahead and ate it with his Sage of Latnam. So because it was an artifact and an artifact creature, Joe was able to eat that. So... And I'm wondering if David could have stripped it in response to him activating it before it actually became an artifact creature. That could have prevented that. I'm not sure. But he waited till he was attacking, and then he was able to eat it with the Sage of Latnam. I might have the timing wrong on that. So David says Regrowth. I believe he just put the Regrowth right in his graveyard. He has an Emerald right there. He taps the Emerald in the Soul Ring. So David is casting Regrowth. He's announced he's targeting Divine Offering and Divine Offering in Joe's turn. So I was going to talk about this before. So what happens with Suchi is that when it dies, it adds 4 colorless mana to your mana pool. You get the mana back from casting it as colorless, but this is a mana burn format. So if you can't use that mana before the end of the phase that we're in currently, you take mana burn. So Suchi is a bit of a risky card to play in rules sets like this because... right now, Yeti's got 4 mana he needs to deal with, or he takes mana burn. And so it looks like Yeti did take the mana burn in the book right there, and now David's attacking for 2 more with the factory. So the dice haven't been updated from all of that action just yet, but we'll get that updated. So what happened there is, Yeti lost a lot of life there. David gained a lot of life from the Divine Offering, so that was an 8-point life swing right there. Now, if Yeti had something like a Mishra's Factory, he could dump that mana into the factory or a Circle of Protection or something where you can dump your mana. But sadly, his board did not have a way for him to use that mana in response to that. So on Yeti's turn, he's taking a look, and he'll tap 4, and there is a Juggernaut. All right, Juggernaut is a potent threat. Here in Game 1, there's a Chaos Orb. On the stack, David sacrifices the Lotus and says, we'll counter that, because David's land was tapped out. David took a point from mana burn right there. And I believe David is down to 28. That's how the dice are laid out. There's a 2 in the 10s place and 8 in the 1s place. And Yeti is at 12. After all that life swinging. David has gained now, by my count, I think 12 life from Divine Offerings. So not a bad card to have there. David taps 4 and plays out another book. David has 2 more, and there's a balance. So David was emptying out his hand. Unfortunately, the creatures for Yeti have to go. Now, he can do what he's doing here. He's tapping the Sage of Latnam to discard or to sacrifice the Juggernaut to draw a card. We're still in response to the balance, so he's going to have to discard another card after drawing, but you might as well here. That way you can keep a little bit better card. So he draws a card. We still have a balance on the stack ready to resolve. Players are counting up their lands. Your creatures are going to have to go because David has 0 creatures on the battlefield right now. His factory is not active. So they have to discard to hand to equal hand size. They discard to equal hand size. They discard to equal creatures and equal lands. So Joe lost that creature. Joe right now is looking for how many cards to discard. I can't quite tell how many in David's hand. It might just be 1. So yeah, it looks like Yeti discards 3, including a Mind Twist right there on the top. David's going to light up the factory and come in, and they're updating the dice now. So there we go. Yeti goes to 4. Yep, Yeti goes to 4. They had written down the notes before from the mana burn on the Suchi earlier, but the dice weren't updated. I believe the dice are updated now. So Yeti's side, he's tapping 4 mana. 5, 6, and there is a Triskelion. Triskelion is a nice defense for now. Now, if David has an artifact destruction spell, he can disenchant it. I believe that is that's a swords. Okay, so now Yeti has a choice here. Does he want to ping David for 3, or does he want to gain more life? Looks like he pings David. Yep, he pings David in response to the swords, and then he gains a little bit less life. So he's at 4 right now. The Triskelion is a 1/1 by itself, and that is a Swords to Plowshares in David's graveyard, and the Triskelion is removed from the game. So David's going to draw. David's tapping, and here's a huge Brain Geyser from David. Yeti says, sure, go ahead. David taking a look at his options here. Yeti is fairly low on life. He's at 4. I'm not sure if he gained or made a note to gain from when the Triskelion went to the graveyard. That sequence happened kind of quickly. All right, he's going to pump fake an activation of the factory and pass the turn back to David. David has 2 active books. He has enough mana to actually activate them both, but I'd likely he'll leave mana up for counters. Here comes a Demonic Tutor, and that is a Fireball that he grabs with the Demonic Tutor. But I think they're taking a look at whether or not he has a red source. There's the red source. So the Fireball came out. Question about whether or not he had a red source to cast it on board, and then David went ahead and dropped the Ruby down on the table. So nice, exciting game 1 right there. We saw a lot of potent cards back and forth firing at each other. This is living up to the hype of a championship match here at YETICON 2.0. Players going to their sideboards in this best-of-3 match. Let's see what they can come up with for game number 2. After sideboard here, it's game 2 from the championship match at YETICON 2.0. David was able to hold on. Yeti's going to be on the play here for game 2, looking to force a game 3. David, of course, trying to put this one away in the first sideboarded game. Yeti is going to put 1 down on the bottom. David shows off his hand. We got Felwar Stone, a Swords to Plowshares, at least 1 Swords, and I believe a Soul Ring in there. So David has some early acceleration. I don't know if I saw a book right there. There's a Suchi, a Mind Twist, a Time Twister, I believe, for Yeti. So Yeti likely looking to get that Time Twister out and maybe Mind Twist first. Let's see what he chooses to do. There's a couple of card advantage things he can do. There's a Factory, and there's a Mind Twist. So Factory, Black Lotus, Mind Twist for 3. So before David can do anything, his cards are there. There's a couple ways you can even out card advantage or card disadvantage from mulliganing, and that's one. That's an effective one right there, I'd say. Swords to Plowshares, Brain Geyser, and Felwar Stone. So we have a defensive answer card, a Brain Geyser card advantage card, and a mana acceleration card out of his hand. David draws, play a Tundra, and there's an Ancestral Recall. So David says, all right, you make me discard 3. I'll just go ahead and draw 3 more. Unfortunate that was a follow-up. Yeti probably going, I wish I could have had that one, or if that was a rip off the top, that was a nice rip. I don't know if I saw that in David's opening hand when he showed that off. Anyway, on Yeti's side, he's got a City of Brass. He'll tap it to go to 19. And we have a Time Walk. So untap. You can build up a little bit of a mana advantage now. There's a City of Brass. Down to 18. And there's an Ancestral Recalls right back. So we've got a Mind Twist and 2 Ancestral Recalls in this game. So we have a 9-card swing in terms of card advantage cards so far, only here in a couple turns in. There's another Factory. He'll light up that first one and attack for 2. So David goes to 18. Yeti also at 18 from the City of Brass. Pretty effective use of the Time Walk turn to Ancestral to gain the card advantage back. And now we are on to it. David does drop his second blue mana source as another Tundra. Yeti's turn, taking a look at how he wants to proceed, knowing that David has 2 mana. He's going to tap the City of Brass and 2 Factories. Considering what to do. And actually, we'll pump fake that. It looks like he passed the turn. I believe the Time Twister might still be in hand for Yeti. That, of course, is equalizer in cards, but right now Yeti should have the advantage in card draw after the Mind Twist and the Ancestral. So might not want to play that just yet. It can be a way to maybe try to bait a counterspell early here. David's side, he has a Mox Ruby and the Soul Ring. David plays down a Factory and says, go. There's a City of Brass, another one for Yeti. Yeti access to all of his colors, but he would probably rather trade those for Tundras right now. He's on 18 from a couple of city activations. He'd like to get a board presence down. If he has to start playing his big artifacts out, he's going to be taking a couple of damage every turn. And he'd rather not take damage to attack. If he had to activate his Factories, he'd be taking damage to light them up and bring them across. But he likely wants to build up his mana, knowing that David has plenty of artifact destruction. He's, I believe, deciding to keep his Factories home so that they can just be lands for him when he wants to play out a little bit more potent threat, like a Juggernaut, like a Golem, like a Triskelion. He passes the turn to David. David's tapping 4. Taps it with the Factory. And when a deck player taps 4, you know you might be in trouble because there is a book and there is so he lets it resolve. Try to disenchant after it's resolved. David says, we'll counter your disenchant. So he doesn't read the book off of it. He just says, I'll counter your disenchant. Yeti did take a damage on the disenchant attempt from his City of Brass, and the book stays in. David doesn't get to draw from it this turn because he had to use 2 mana for the counterspell, but of course David will take that trade. Yeti's side, he takes 2 damage, and there is a Juggernaut. So he taps the 2 Factories and the City of Brass for the Juggernaut. He goes to 15. And David says, let's disenchant that Juggernaut, likely on end step. Then David goes to untap. David drops a land. He'll read the book. And that's a volcanic island. David's on most of his colors. He will light up his Factory and attack. Yeti down to 13 here in game 2. And David looking to start the squeeze. He's building up a board advantage, a mana advantage thanks to that book, and the card advantage just will slowly grind up. Here is Yeti tapping for 3, takes another damage from the City of Brass. It's always a tough break when you have that much. He tries to play, looks like, there's the Time Twister, and David says counter the Time Twister. That's the one we saw, I believe, in Yeti's opening hand. And that is a way to reset card advantage. As I said before, once the deck player starts drawing, you can reset yourself a little bit. And right now they're attacking. David's attacking with 2, and he's pumping with the other one. I believe the players are just making sure what's tapped and how they're tapped. So David does say, end up tapping the other one to pump that first one for 3. I believe Yeti went from 12 down to 9 right there. Yeti taking a look at what he can do. A Suchi right there, so 2 more damage. He marks himself at 10 after that, and then they do correct it down to 7. So that is now correct. David draws from the book. That was the 3 damage that we missed from the factory attack earlier. It was in the book, but just wasn't on the dice that you could see at home. Okay, David untaps. The Suchi is there. He plays a library. He reads off the book. David likely looking for another artifact destruction spell to force Joe to burn again. And it's now this time Joe can avoid the burn by putting mana into the factories, which you see Joe taps his factories to do. So the 4 mana comes to the mana pool. David does gain 4 life because that's the casting cost of the Suchi, but this time Joe is able to feed that mana to activate his factories. Now David had a window there. He could have played an artifact destruction on a factory. They're actually vulnerable to that. David has he swings in, he plays a time walk. He goes to his time walk turn, and he's going to attack for 4, and that is the game. So the last sequence there went quite quickly. David with the answer to the Suchi, another Divine Offering. Joe does not burn from the 4 mana of the Divine Offering, but then David is able to swing in with the factories, play the time walk, and then get another swing in for 4. So that last sequence did go quite quickly. Congratulations to David Merriam on your left, piloting the deck, is able to survive 5 rounds of Swiss, a semifinal, and now the championship match. So awesome job, David. Yeti, love to see your deck. We saw it a couple times here on the channel. Very happy that we got to feature that. Here we can see both players talking about their sideboards, talking about the strategies. In the room, we are celebrating the end of the official tournament as everyone's got all kinds of other games and side action going on. There's plenty of drinks being served by the bartenders at the wonderful venue that we had. So YETICON 2.0 is in the books here for this year. I want to give a big thanks to all the people who put this together. Green Mountain Beer Company, our venue host, Jared and Sarah Miller, for doing the work to put this tournament together. All the players who traveled from near and far to be here with us. I so enjoyed seeing a lot of the same old faces again. I enjoyed playing in the matches, and I enjoyed bringing them to you here on this channel. If you've liked this action, I just only appreciate you let me know on Discord or leave a comment here on these videos. I will try to have Magic content on here when I think of it, or definitely look for me again in YETICON 2024. Hope you enjoyed the coverage here, and I will see you when I see you.